Just a friendly reminder of our housekeeping rules, which include turning on your camera is encouraged. Also, please, everyone, ensure your microphone is muted. So if you are not speaking, ensure that all background noises are at a minimum when you are speaking. And finally, but not least, use the raise hand function or jot your messages in the chat below for questions for the panel in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, PM Christina. Now we will move on to the four-way test led by DRR Mario Boyce.
Good evening, everyone. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill
and better friendships?
Will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. Back to you, Blair.
Thank you, DRR Mario. So on behalf of the Professional Development Committee of the Rotaract Club of Barbados, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all Rotarians, Rotaractors, and specially invited guests who are here with us this evening. I would like to take this moment to thank Mr. Stephen Strickland, our panelist, for taking the time to be with us this evening. Thank you all for coming. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. We have received apologies and excuses from the following. So from Committee Secretary Janelle Jordan, she may be late this afternoon, and President-elect Daniel Donowa will be absent. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize some other very specially invited guests who are here with us. That is DRR Mario Boyce. And I understand that we also have VP Gabrielle Whitehall here from the Rotaract Club of South Barbados. So I want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. All right, we're going to go on to a little overview of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, so the Professional Development Committee seeks to provide substance and meaningful opportunities to all club members to learn and apply new knowledge and skills that can help them with all professional aspects of their lives and further their careers. Professional development is about growth. It's about building your skill set and knowledge base for your development. In consideration of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our work life, this committee has considered the importance of having a well-rounded and in-depth understanding of the various aspects of NIS, its importance and its benefits. This evening, we have with us Mr. Stephen Strickland, who is excited to enlighten us on this topic. And without further ado, I invite PM Desiree Puckering to present Mr. Strickland's bio. Excuse me. Over to you.
Good afternoon, all. Good evening, all. I am PM Desiree. Today's speaker is Mr. Stephen Strickland. Stephen is a retired officer of the National Insurance Department with 35 years of experience, primarily in benefits. With the rising numbers from COVID-19, Stephen returned to service, this time as a consultant to assist them with their increased backlog of claims. Stephen, who worked the majority of his life in customer service, said his experiences at NIS has given him a tremendous sense of fulfillment and strongly believes serving is paramount. The father of four currently serves as the Minister of Religion at the Pentecostal House of Prayer in Connaughton, St. Lucie. A Bible school teacher for over 40 years and a Cub Scout leader, Stephen remains passionate about the guidance, development, and education of the youth. He makes it his business to maintain such relationships as it keeps him current with the times and gives him energy. A farmer all his life, Stephen now uses this as a means to escape and relax. He currently grows herbs such as thyme and parsley, amongst other things. When not in the garden, you can find him on the track at the senior games, competing as a self-proclaimed long-distance runner. Stephen lives by the word, but his personal mantra comes from Romans 8, verses 28, and it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Comrades, welcome. Let's welcome Mr. Stephen Strickland.
Thank you, and good evening to one and all.
Evening.
I have been looking forward to this since when I spoke to Blair on the first occasion. National insurance has always been, part of my life, and as a result, with the volume of staff from the National Insurance Office retiring, yes, it is important that the knowledge base of national insurance is shared. The National Insurance Department is a board. The funds are managed by a board, but the staff themselves are managed by central government, so that it's important for Barbados to know that even though the funds are managed by a board, the board of the National Insurance Department is constituted along the ILO standards, in that it must be tripartite with the other boards in government. If the political party is changed, if the government changes, then all board members tender their resignation. Of the National Insurance Board, only 3 of the 6 board members should or might tender their resignation. The other 6 members are 2 persons representing all employees in Barbados, that being the Barbados Workers Union and the Barbados Employers the NUPW and the Barbados Workers Union. All employers are represented on the board by the Barbados Employers Confederation and the Hotel Association. Because national insurance is a social security scheme, then it means that all this chief labor officer sits on the board, and because it's a financial institution, the director of finance sits on the board. So that through the 54 national insurance celebrates 55 years this year, having started in June, the 5th of June, 1967. National insurance has had some fantastic chairmen through the years, and national insurance has stayed the course in respective of which political party that has been in place. National insurance is the only government department that actually collects money and administers the same money that it collects, so that the funds necessary to finance the board are derived through various means, and therefore national insurance has on staff both accountants, actuaries, lawyers, and whatever profession necessary for the smooth and effective function of the National Insurance Department. So that the funds of the National Insurance Department are derived mainly through 3 areas. One, that being investments. Now we hear a lot in Barbados, we've heard a lot in Barbados about national insurance lending money out and so forth. But national insurance has a total portfolio of over $5 billion. And therefore, if national insurance is to pay the over 40,000 pensioners, which they have to pay every month, and outside of COVID, approximately 5,000 claims, new claims every month. It is, and with Barbados boasting of having the 2nd largest number of centenarians in the world, and with reducing birth rate, it means that national insurance has to find means of financing the clients to which it serves. Now, if national insurance keeps that money within the bank, we know that the interest rate is less than 1%. But with national insurance investing monies, whether it be in the building of buildings and so forth, then it means that not only persons find employment, and both employees and employers are able to make the contribution of the rate, which is 23.85. I'll deal with that later, but also interest, so that it's important for national insurance to invest those monies that it has in whether it be government paper or whatever means, whether it's in the telephone company Light and Power, or the different persons, entities, both in the Caribbean and overseas. This is vitally important. So the first one I would like to mention would be that of investments. The second would be that of real estate. National Insurance owned both the Frank Walcott building that the National Insurance Department is housed in, which the Ministry of Health is located in that building. There is the E. Humphrey Walcott building, which the Ministry of the Civil Service and Personal Administration is housed in. Towers 2, the building the electoral office is in. Baobab Towers, which corporate affairs and other government departments are located in. A United Nations building on St. Matthias. So that we see the kind of investment that National Insurance has in Barbados in real estate, which obviously brings in a tremendous amount of funds for the paying for those persons to it serves. The other area would be the one that would involve, I would say, most, if not all Barbadians. Well, all Barbadians who are gainfully employed. I'm going to start with self-employed. I'm going to start with self-employed simply because there is the notion in Barbados that if you are self-employed, you can choose whether to pay contributions or not. Now, National Insurance legislation states that the National Insurance Department serves the right to determine who first is employed and who is self-employed. Now, if you are deemed self-employed by National Insurance for the simple reason that your income is $21 per week or more, then you are expected to pay contributions of 17.10%, and this is paid quarterly. So my suggestion, my advice to those in the audience, to look out for all of your friends, relatives, whoever you know who are self-employed, and passionately encourage them to pay self-employed contributions. Now, I'm well aware that self-employed persons are busy, so if you really care about that loved one in your life, then you may need to get that person registered, collect the contributions for them, and submit them to the National Insurance Department in a timely manner. Because I'm going to jump down to non-contributory pensions at this moment and come back just for the purpose of explaining why it is critical. Now, non-contributory pension, which is for those persons who do not qualify for a contributory pension, is still paid, and I believe will continue to be paid in Barbados. But if you are self-employed or you were self-employed during your working life and you fail to pay contributions, because a non-contributory pension is not an automatic right, it means that on reaching the age of 67, which is the standard age for pension, you apply for a non-contributory pension, there will be an interview conducted. And when it is proven that you were gainfully employed, whether it be selling nuts, corn, whatever, picking cotton, and your earnings exceeded $21 in any week, you did not pay contributions, then your non-contributory pension may very well be disallowed. And therefore, you and I who may not have the time to encourage our loved ones to pay contributions, we will very well be the ones that may have to support them in their senior years. So my suggestion to you would be to make sure that they are paid in a timely manner. In other words, January, February, March should be paid by the 15th of April, May, and June by July, August, September by October, and October, November, and December by January of the 15th of each of those months following the quarter. And therefore, you need to supply, whether it be a birth certificate for a male and your ID card, or a marriage certificate and a birth certificate for ladies who are married. So that is the first area of your person's responsibility towards themselves in making sure that if you are self-employed, make sure that those contributions are paid and paid in a timely manner. Now, for those in the, there are the benefits that self-employed persons are, I'm going to go through all of the benefits eventually, but there are 3 benefits that the self-employed person is not entitled to. Those being unemployment, severance, and employment injury. Employment injury, if you're injured on the job, you will not receive the 90% of, for employment injury. You can receive 6 and 2/3%, which is sickness. But so that, because for all 3 of these, you're going to need an independent individual. For employment injury, you would need the employer to indicate that the person was entitled to be doing what they were doing at the job. The accident actually happened on the job. For unemployment, the employer would have to provide information to determine whether the person was laid off, dismissed, or resigned. And in the case of severance, you will need the employer to indicate whether the person position became redundant or they were laid off for 13 weeks continuous or 16 weeks in a 6-month period, so that all the other benefits, whether it be sickness, maternity, invalidity, old age pension, all those other benefits, the person who is self-employed is entitled to. Within the private sector, persons in the private sector are entitled to all of the benefits under the scheme. Their rate of contribution is 11.10%. The employer make a contribution of 12.75, which is a total of 23.85, which is paid on a monthly basis. So if there are any employers in the audience this afternoon, you are responsible, the employer is responsible to national insurance for the full contribution. They have the right to make the deduction at the time the salary is paid, but if they fail to make that deduction at the time the salary is paid, they are still liable to national for the full contribution and cannot make that deduction at a later time. So my suggestion to those persons who are employers, again, you cannot determine whether the person is self-employed or not. National insurance holds right. If you need guidance, you can seek before compliance section and be able to give guidance to whether the person is self-employed or employed. And it means that you should, with the labor laws, provide the persons with their records, because our compliance will be checking to make sure that you are compliant in respect of contributions. And if they are late, obviously there are these interest payments. There are those persons in the private sector who, in the government public sector, who are temporary officers. Your rate of contribution is the same as those in the private sector, 11.10%. And again, you're entitled to all of the benefits under the scheme. For appointed officers, they pay a lesser percentage, because an appointed officer is not entitled to severance, nor unemployment. Sorry, they're not entitled to unemployment or severance. So the rate of contribution is 9.90%. So there's only one other, that would be those persons who are under the age of 16 and over the age of 67, who are still gainfully employed as an employee. The rate of contribution is 0.6%, and the employer is 1.25%. This is paid in case that individual is injured on the job. That's the only type of benefit that the person who's under 16 or over 65 can receive. So you may still be gainfully employed over 67 because maybe a watchman or whatever else. You cannot receive sickness benefit and those other benefits because you should already be in receipt of your old age contributory pension. I am going to pause in between so that if there are any questions you may have in respect of the 2 areas I just covered, which will be the composition of the board and the rate of contributions, you can do that at this present moment.
Hi, good night. I see Kim has a question, or she has her hand up. Do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, please. Good evening. I heard you mention the last part for pensioners that are over 67. They will only be contributing. They will only be contributing to sickness or injury if they're working after 67.
We're only contributing towards employment injury, not sickness.
Okay.
We only receive employment injury and by extension, medical expenses and traveling because they all come together. Employment injury always comes together with medical expenses and traveling. But persons over 67 are only entitled to those combination of benefits.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Now, for persons who, especially, well, I would say women, whenever you change your name, it's critical to submit to the National Insurance Department all documents in relation to the change of the name. It's also important to ensure that you indicate both to the National Insurance Department and to your employer the name or names that you seek to use. For the simple reason, if a woman is married, she must produce her birth certificate, all original documents, birth certificate, marriage certificate. If she's using both surnames, both her maiden and marriage name, she must indicate to National Insurance and to her employer that she's using both names, for the simple reason that once earnings are received at the National Insurance Department and the name sent by the employer does not match the earning, the name in our records, they will not be allocated to your National Insurance number. They will be put into what is called a suspense account until you are able to indicate that the two are the same, because earnings could get lost if they put under, there can be sometimes 3, 4, 5 persons with the same name. So it's critical to make sure that when they are sent by the employer, that the same name is at our department. This is especially for government workers, because very often those in the private sector will come, have the name changed, but for those in the public sector, they seem to believe that their employer would have notified National Insurance of the change of name. I'm going to go on to the types of benefits that are available under the scheme. Right. Now, National Insurance has really been, I don't want to say burdened, but National Insurance has received a tremendous amount of claims both in 2020 and 2021, especially unemployment. I subject to correction, but I think the claims went as far as 54,000 claims, I think, in 2020 alone. So that, as was indicated when it was introduced, I came back from retirement after 8 years to assist the department with the processing of those claims. National Insurance has done, I believe, a fantastic job due to the fact that both, not only those persons were unemployed, but National Insurance suffered staff-wise in respect of persons contracting COVID also. National Insurance has worked feverishly to reduce those unemployment claims, but now the sickness claims have skyrocketed. I'm not certain of the total that are outstanding. Sufficient to say that with the number of persons we are reading that are testing positive and home isolation or in isolation, the number of those individuals are sending in sickness claims to the National Insurance Department. There are some questions out there on how to submit those claims. Some of those claims are coming in by way of email, whereby doctors are emailing the claims to individuals. They are then filling them out and sending them in via email. But also, I strongly suggest that when persons are released, they take that release certificate to the polyclinic, and the polyclinics are issuing those sickness claims so that you have a physical claim to send in the National Insurance Department. For sickness in Barbados, no employee has to submit a medical certificate to their employer which contains the cause of illness. The employee can obtain a yellow form for the National Insurance Department, which you must, but you can obtain a white form letter from the doctor, which only carries the date of examination and the expected date of the date you are expected to return to work. Now, as much as you may not have to take a form to your employer containing your cause of illness, and we know that with social media that can end up in the wrong place, but your employer would hold the right that because they do not know what was wrong with you, they can require that you submit another letter or a form from your doctor indicating on resumption that you are fit to resume work. So that's the first thing. Second, never in the history of Barbados did any employer have to pay any employee for any day away from work. We've had a 6 days common law practice by some employers in Barbados, which has dwindled through the years because it has been abused. But there's no, unless there's a contractual agreement between the employer and a trade union representing employees or directly with employees, then that employer does not have to pay the employee while they are sick. Now, if a person is away from work for 1 day, you are expected, I believe, to call your employer to indicate to your employer that you will not be at work that day because of illness. On the second day, I believe that you should call your employer again to indicate that you will not be at work because of illness. On the third day, you don't need to call your employer, because if by the close of the work day, your employer has not received, for whatever reason, a sickness claim, a medical certificate letter from your doctor, then you have terminated your own services. The employer will not have to dismiss you. You have terminated your own services by virtue of the fact that you've abandoned your job. And I've come across a number of situations where individuals gave those certificates to a friend or relative to take into their employer, and they either forgot to drop it off or dropped the wrong place, and therefore the employer used that opportunity to be rid of that particular employee. So that's your responsibility to make sure that your employer receives it by the close of on the third day. Now, for the National Insurance Department, all claims must be received at National Insurance Department within a 1-year period, except severance. I think severance is 6 months, but definitely the sickness, maternity, all those other claims, they must be received in National Insurance within a 1-year period. Sorry, unemployment must be received within a 2-week period, and I'll get to that when we get to the unemployment. But sufficient that you can delay in submitting your sickness claim, but you cannot delay in submitting to National Insurance, but you cannot delay in submitting that sickness form to your employer. The rate of contribution for sickness, as I said earlier, is 6 2/3%. You are not paid for the first 3 days of a sickness claim if the sickness claim is less than two weeks. There are some individuals interpret that to mean you are not paid for your sickness claim if it is less than 2 weeks. No, it is saying you're not paid for the first 3 days if the claim is less than 2 weeks. No, so you could have a claim for 1 week and you have to serve the 3 waiting days. But if you do not return to work and you have an extension of that claim, which surpasses a total of 2 weeks, you would, having not been paid for the first 3 days, having received the second claim, National Insurance will then go back and pay you the 3 days you were not paid. And then for the full second claim, once the combination of continuous exceeds 2 weeks. Now, if you return to work between claims and the next claim is less than 13 weeks from the end of the last claim, then you do not have to serve waiting days again. Once it's less than the 30-week period. But if that sickness claim exceeds, your return to work exceeds 13 weeks, then your next claim may very well have to serve the waiting days. So that is, no, there's what it's called relevant quarters. I'm going to go through that very quickly, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But there's what is called a relevant quarter, so that if your claim is right now, say in the month, the quarter, January, February, March, the penultimate clock quarter being October, November, and December is not used. July, August, and September would be the relevant quarter. And in that quarter, you must have at least 7 paid or credited contributions in that quarter. I'm going to deal with what is credited contributions at this moment. So I'm not going to forget to deal with that up front. Now, if you are away from work, sickness, maternity, unemployment, those benefits, and injury, and your claim is from a Monday to Saturday, you are given a credit. Meaning, if the average weekly salary for the calculation of that claim is say $400 a week, you're away from work, then National Insurance will issue you with a credit of $400. And credits are used for other benefits, including pensions. So the notion that the volume of sickness benefit maternity that a person receives will reduce their pension is not true. Once the person receives the credit for that particular week, once the person has reached the 500 contributions necessary for the contributory pension, then the credits are added. So just going back quickly to the credits, once you receive a credit, then if your employer, because some employers pay employees while they are away from work, and the employer makes a deduction from that salary, the credits override contribution. So you could have a credit for, say, last week of $400, but the employer paid you $300 in salary for last week and submitted contributions. It would mean that either the employee or the employer should write the Direction of National Insurance within a year after the end of the year. In other words, for 2021, that letter should be written by the end of 2022. Okay, then the nationals will refund both the employee and the employer for that deduction that was made where a credit was issued. So that is the sickness benefit, and I will go from sickness into invalidity. But going back to the government officers, the temporary officers are paid by government for 14 days sick leave. If they're away from work for more than 14 days, then they need to apply to the National Insurance Department for their sickness benefit. Appointed officers will not receive sickness benefit from National Insurance. And persons can receive sickness benefit for 1 year. So that in the case of an appointed officer, they will receive their salary for 1 year. 21 days in the initial period, but it can be extended up to 1 year, and then it can be extended at half pay to another 6 months. So the appointed officer is not disadvantaged by way of not receiving a sickness benefit, which they do not pay towards because they will receive their salary, but the temporary officer can receive. So therefore, once contributions are paid for a period, then the individual can apply for a refund of contributions. Any questions on sickness? I'm going to deal with the sickness before we get on to the invalidity. Any questions on sickness? Right, thank you. Going on to invalidity. After a person has, at any point, actually, an individual can go to their doctor, and if in the doctor's professional opinion, they qualify to receive a invalidity claim, which is a green form, then the person can submit that claim to National Insurance. Because your personal doctor issued that form, National Insurance will send either someone to visit you, which they're not currently doing because of COVID, or they will call to interview that individual to make a determination to some extent is if they would, that person would receive the invalidity pension. Because National Insurance do not have medical practitioners on staff, National Insurance may make a decision because they're not satisfied that the person should qualify. They will set an appointment with a medical practitioner, and therefore that person will be sent at National Insurance's expense to be examined that person, the doctor will then determine whether that person should qualify for invalidity or not. If the doctor believes that the person does not qualify, then that person has the right to appeal to a medical appeals tribunal to determine whether they are entitled to the invalidity. So there are always tribunals of appeals that National Insurance has for persons in Barbados. So for persons after reaching 1 year of sickness benefit, you cannot, because you can no longer receive sickness benefit. If you are unable to work still, then it means that your employer, so you would have to visit your doctor, and your doctor will then issue that form. But persons receive invalidity forms at any age because of varying ailments, whether it be cases of diabetes, hypertension, person who is suffering from AIDS, mental, heart condition. There are a number of areas that doctors may very well issue an invalidity claim for. Now, for the invalidity claim, once the person qualifies for the invalidity, okay, well, much slightly. Now, if a person might not have had their full year of sickness, but the doctor may issue an invalidity form. What nationals will do is that they will pay you the remaining sickness benefit that you're entitled to, which is at 60 to 30%. And then after that, you will then proceed on invalidity. The calculation for invalidity is basically the same as old age pension. The difference being that while the invalidity is calculated on 3 years, you must have at least 3 years paid contributions. The old age contributor, you need 500, but because the calculation is basically the same, once the person qualifies for the invalidity at age 67, they do not have to apply for an old age contributor pension, so that the amount that they are in receipt of for invalidity, they will continue to receive for old age contributory pension. So you will not have to apply for an old age contributory pension at age 67. And therefore, as I said, the invalidity can start at any point in a person's life, but this is largely dependent in the first case by their doctor, but then National Insurance holds the right to, after interview, to send the person to. If the person qualifies for invalidity pension, you are not supposed to be gainfully employed. Now, there are a lot of myths out there that if you're in receipt of invalidity pension, you can't leave home, you can't, volunteer and do something. You cannot be gainfully employed. You can run at the scene of games and enjoy yourself, because there's you're getting exercise and you should be relaxing and whatever that, unless you want to win. You want so, but I'm just saying that you can still have fun, enjoy your life if you are in receipt of invalidity pension. So sickness goes towards invalidity. Okay. The next one I will deal with will be injury, which goes towards disablement. Any questions in respect of invalidity at this moment? Okay. We're going on to employment injury. The same yellow form that you receive from your doctor, which is used for sickness, is the same form that is used for injury. Now, for injury, well, when you receive the form, there are 3 questions. 1, accident or bodily disablement in course of employment. 2, accident not work related. And 3, sickness. So that 2 and 3 are basically the same thing. So that if in your opinion, not in the opinion of the doctor, not in the opinion of your employer, but if in your opinion, you believe that what you are suffering from is work related, then you should tick A, and by extension to the back of the form, you should answer all of the questions there and answer them to the fullest extent. I said to the fullest extent because National Insurance spent a great deal of time having to make phone calls, having to send forms out for persons to supply the relevant information. Same with sickness claims. A number of persons do not put on the last day of work. They don't provide telephone numbers. So if National Insurance has to reach that individual, there are headaches. trying to reach those individuals. Sometimes they don't change their addresses. So for the employment injury, it is critically important to indicate to the back of the form all that has happened, the exact place it happened, how it happened, whether it was reported or not. For the simple reason that for every employment injury claim, National Insurance has to send a report to the employer to get verification from the employer in respect of their knowledge of the injury. I want to repeat that. It is critically important for persons to indicate on that form to the back. The doctor, must be also very specific so that if the person fell and they hurt their left shoulder, their right shoulder, their back, their big toe on the right foot, their head, each one of the injuries which are observed at that time should be indicated by the doctor. And when you're filling your form out, you need to indicate all of the injuries. This is critically important because we're going to deal with disablement. When you have a disablement claim, these are going to be important because you will be sent to a doctor to be examined, and only the areas that you would have indicated you hurt will be examined for a percentage to be issued for each of those body parts. So that, yes, there are injuries that may develop afterwards, because you could hurt your hand, your foot, and then subsequently there is a pain in your back, and therefore a back injury may be realized. Then it would mean you have to get a letter from your doctor indicating that that injury to your current injury to your back was related to your accident that happened on X time. So that employment injuries are very, very detailed, because the rate of contribution for injury is 90%. It would mean that the once the claim is approved for employment injury, then it means that medical expenses and traveling incurred as a result of that that injury, there can be a refund of those medical expenses and traveling to within limits. I don't have all of the percentages at present, but sufficient that there are percentages for the doctor, medication, therapy. Okay, so that's the medical expenses. So once you are injured on the job, now the injuries can be in the form of a cut, a fall, which would have occurred on a particular day. But there are also occupational injuries which a person might have developed over a period of time. Those being lower back strain, carpal tunnel, respiratory tract infection. They're the occupational injuries that persons may experience. What I would suggest is that if you are developing occupational injuries, you should, as much as possible, put it in writing to your employer that you are being affected by the noise, the dust, the use of whatever else which is causing you to have back injuries and whatever else. So that when the report goes to your employer is in a position to know. And because the reporting system from employer to employer differs, some person may say to an individual who is working off-site from the EHR, and therefore it may not get there, someone might forget and whatever else. So that's why it's very important to make sure that who is reported to, is reliable, and you check to make sure that it's being reported and whatever else. So for employment injury, you can receive employment, you can receive sickness benefit for a total of 1 year. And this is where the claims are connected by less than 13 weeks. For employment injury, you will qualify for employment injury 52 weeks from the date of the accident. So if the accident happened today today is the 1st of March 2022, 52 weeks from today, you can no longer qualify for employment injury from this injury. That doesn't mean you cannot be compensated. I'll get to that when I go to increase disablement and disablement. But medical expenses and traveling can be refunded over the course of your life once they are still directly related to your injury. And nationals will examine every receipt to make sure that what you are claiming for is related to your injury. Because persons sending medical expenses for MRIs and all kinds of things that are not related to the person's injury, and national insurance may very well not refund, but you have a right to appeal. So that's the employment injury portfolio. Any questions about employment injury? Thank you very much. I'm going for the medical expenses to the traveling. Now, for traveling, there are 3 areas of travel. One, by public transport. We are aware that there are those minibuses which do not provide tickets. I don't think transport board issues tickets any longer. But so there's going to be no need for proof that the person would have traveled by public transport, and it's a fixed cost of $350 per journey, so that if the person is traveling from where they have to get connecting transportation, going say from the north to say Oysters, where they have to take 2 pieces of transportation, but then that's $7 going and $7 coming, so that's $14 that person will seek a refund of travel expenses for every visit to the to the pharmacy, to the doctor. But this must be proven by way of a receipt from a pharmacist or by a receipt from a medical person, either MRI or the doctor or whatever else. Where the individual is traveling by a taxi, the receipt as obtained, a receipt must be obtained from a taxi driver. And the taxi driver must be one registered with licensing authority. Also, the amount being sent in to be refunded must be within the licensing authority schedule. So the licensing has schedules from different areas in Barbados to different areas. What is the taxi rate? If you are traveling by your private transportation, well, then you would indicate from, to, and back. And you can provide the kilometers, or national insurance will use Google Map or other means to determine your distance, and then you will be funded $1.50 per kilometer. So what I found is a lot of persons are seek refund of medical expenses because they use their private vehicle. They do not seek a refund of traveling expenses, but you can think, okay, there's one last, and that would be if you are traveling overseas. Now, if your injury require you to have medical attention, which is not available in Barbados, then it means that your doctor would have to provide you with a letter to the Director of National Insurance, not seeking permission to travel, because you may need to leave your ambulance and there's no opportunity to seek permission, but where possible, so that National Insurance, having received that letter, when you return and you submit your receipts for traveling and medical expenses, your claim can be given a very favorable response. Yes, if you do not send a letter, you had the opportunity, National Insurance may very well make a decision how much they refund you of that receipt, so that this will be for your airfare. Part of it will be refunded, and the medical expenses incurred overseas in relation to hospitalization and medical attention. If you are unable to travel alone, then you should have a letter from your doctor indicating that you are unable to travel alone, and therefore the person who is traveling with you, their airfare will be considered also. But again, those letters should be sent to the National Insurance Department prior to leaving the island if you want it to be most favorably considered. So that's the traveling expense along with the medical. and employment injury. Any questions at this point in respect of employment injury? You can hold your questions to the end if you choose to, but you may want to ask some of them now if you choose to also. I'm going to go on to disablement and increase disablement. Now, once you continue to suffer from that injury over and above a year, 52 weeks from the date of the accident, you need to send a disablement form to the National Insurance Department. This is a form that's collected at the National Insurance Department in the customer service, which you will submit. National will set an appointment for you to be examined by a doctor that you have not visited as yet, because obviously it will be a conflict of interest. So National will set an appointment for you to be visited, examined by that medical practitioner. The medical practitioner will not be examining you to determine whether you can work or not, because, well, for invalidity, you're not allowed to be gainfully employed. For disablement, you can continue to be gainfully employed, because if the percentage loss is 0%, obviously you will not.
Hey, Mr. Strickland, you're muted.
Hi, Mr. Strickland, if you can hear me, you're still muted. So you might want to unmute your mic if you're speaking.
I'm very sorry about that. The other device I was using, I thought it was being charged. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And that's where it is so important to have children who are technically inclined. They were able to get me back up and running. Thank you very much for your patience. I don't know how much you would have missed. I was dealing with the traveling expenses. Is that I had covered the traveling expenses for you? Hello?
Hi there, Mr. Strickland. Yes,
right.
We've heard the travel expenses.
Okay, so I'm at disablement. I dealt with the increased disablement, which is up to 5 years.
You can probably pick up from that part. I don't.
Right. Okay.
I don't have past
okay.
travel. Thank you.
Okay, but sufficient that, as I said, you're sent to the doctor. If the doctor issues you give you 0%, then it means that there's no disablement for you. If they give you between 1 and 29, it's a one-off payment of a disablement. On the other hand, if the disablement percentage is 30% or more, you're entitled to a disablement pension, which is for life. So you can receive a disablement pension and old age pension also. Okay, so that's the disablement. Once it is 1% or more now, it would mean that for the employment injury claims, you can still submit them up to 5 years from the date of the accident. And this is considered to be called increased disablement. If after 5 years you're still suffering, then you would need to, you're still working, you would have to claim sickness benefit. If on the other hand, you are unable to work, you can make the claim for invalidity. So you would claim the increased disablement first, which is the higher percentage, and then you would resort to the invalidity after that. So that is the sickness, invalidity, injury, disablement. The next one I will go on to them will be the maternity. Any questions in respect of maternity? I mean, of those others. You're traveling smooth and sweetly. Now, for maternity, there is no legislation in Barbados which guarantees paternity leave to men. That's a question sometimes asked. One of our staff members asked that question very recently because his girlfriend is pregnant. There's no paternity leave legislated for men. Some companies do provide 1 week of salary for paternity leave, but I would suggest that the man gets this in writing so that it's not used against him in the future for a break in service. Because I've seen these things happen already. For maternity benefit, obviously only a woman can claim maternity benefit. She must qualify by virtue of having 16 weeks paid within 2 quarters ending with the relevant quarter. I want to go back quite quickly to employment injury. Now, while for sickness, you have to be on the job for X amount of time. For employment injury, you could get a job, say, tomorrow morning, and then get hurt tomorrow morning and haven't worked. You can still qualify for employment injury. And case in point, there was the truck that overturned in 6 roads many years ago, and one young man died in the Maryland, 2 others survived. So that for the maternity now, you must have at least 16 paid contributions in the 2 quarters. It's something that I have been trying to get women in Barbados to petition so that maternity benefit can be paid on contributions, but being able to qualify with contributions and credit. But for the sickness, you can have all credit, unemployment all credit, employment injury all credit. You must have at least 16 paid contributions within for maternity benefit within the 2 quarters. Now, a lot of women suffered because having been unemployed during the pandemic, a lot of them, some of them got pregnant, and when it came now to the claiming for the maternity benefit, they did not qualify because they would not have worked for 16 weeks within that 26 weeks period. Also, there's some women who might have been sick shortly after conception and being away from work because of illness for the more than 16 weeks. Well, they have not worked 16 weeks in the relevant quarter. Then the other 2 quarters, they cannot qualify for the maternity benefit. I would like to see the day when that legislation is changed, whereby the woman can benefit from all credit, just like persons claiming unemployment, sickness, or employment injury. For maternity benefit, a woman cannot qualify for more than 6 weeks prior to the expected date of confinement. So that if she's away from work more than 6 weeks, her last day of work is more than 6 weeks prior to the expected date of confinement, it means that the claim starts 6 weeks prior to that date. If she was on sick leave and has been receiving sickness benefit, and then the baby is born and she has not returned to work, then it means that the maternity benefit will override that 6 week period, which she would already receive sickness benefit, and therefore she will be paid the difference between 60 and 2/3 sickness and the 100%, which is the maternity benefit. A woman can work up to the day the baby is born and receive all 12 weeks of maternity benefit. A woman is entitled to 12 weeks of maternity benefit, not 3 months, 3 months being 13 weeks. And some women have found themselves in that awkward position where they were deemed to have abandoned their job, whereby they thought that it was 3 months, remain home for 13 weeks, and on resumption, the employer said, but you did not report to work within 3 days of the end of your maternity benefit, and therefore you have terminated your own services. So it's 12 weeks and not 13 weeks. In other words, you're entitled to 6 weeks before, and you're guaranteed 6 weeks afterwards. But if you work, for some babies, they decide to be born when they choose to. So the lady can go to work in the morning, and the baby can be born the same morning, and therefore she's entitled to the 12-week maternity benefit. Okay. Now, if there is a miscarriage or a stillbirth, and the baby is 28 weeks or more, the doctor or midwife can still issue that confinement certificate. So a lady might not have an expected date of confinement certificate. She may only have a confinement certificate, which is the one that indicates the day the baby was born. So if the baby was 28 weeks or more and it's a stillbirth or miscarriage, then the doctor or midwife can still issue that confinement certificate. Now, based on my knowledge, but I have not been there in 20 years for myself, but the ladies who have miscarriages or stillbirth do not go on B3, which is the one ward that all mothers go on. They go on B4 and B8. Based on my knowledge, those 2 wards do not have midwives. It would mean that when she's being discharged, the doctor would issue her with the confinement certificate. Because there are a lot of women that were sitting through the class at one point because they were not midwives and on that ward and they did not know that they were qualified. So I believe that is in place at the clinic hospital and by extension at all hospitals where babies are born, whereby the doctor can issue that certificate at that point. So that the employer again is not obligated to pay the individuals when they are on maternity leave. Now for teachers, they have
good night, Mr. Strickland. There's
please.
an audience member with a question. So
Okay,
before
go ahead.
on further, I will ask them to
Go ahead.
their question.
Hi, good evening.
Good
Quick
evening.
question. You had mentioned earlier, you were saying that there are 2 quarters in order for a lady to apply for maternity benefit.
To qualify.
So
Go ahead.
qualify. So what are the 2 quarters?
Okay. All benefits start with the relevant quarter so that, as I said, if the claim starts in January to March, we don't use the penultimate quarter, which is October to December, but we use July to September. That's for sickness. For maternity, it ends again with the July to September, but it would include the April to June. So April down to September would be the 2 quarters, and that's where she has to have at least 16 paid contributions in those 2 quarters. I'm going to jump to unemployment very quickly. Unemployment has 3 quarters, ending with the relevant quarter. So the unemployment would be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, those 3 quarters. And they must have 7 paid or credit in the relevant quarter again, okay, like the sickness, but they must have 20 in the combined 3 quarters. So for the maternity, those are the 2 quarters. The relevant quarter, which is the July, August, September, and the October, November, and December. I'm sorry, and the April, May, and June. That answer your question?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So going back to the maternity, once
Can you
Go ahead.
also repeat the part about still the
Stillbirth.
stillbirth and miscarriage?
Okay. No, and this is where because in many cases, in some cases, this occurs, well, most cases, it occurs in the delivery room. And therefore, there are no midwives there to issue maternity claims. So when they go on to B4, B8, then it would mean that on their discharge, they may need to act for that claim because there can be many women who go into that ward who are not working. So they may not need a form, but the lady would have to act for that form. Okay, and therefore the doctor will be the one to issue because the midwives on B3 would never have seen that individual, would never seen their notes or anything. Okay. so that for maternity, the teachers are given somewhat of a special provision, because for most employees, they can make a determination of their last day of work, and not a teacher, because her baby may be due, say, the end of August. Let the baby is due this end of August. Her last day of work will be the end of the school term, which is maybe because the last day of work will be the end of the school term, being say the end of June or the beginning of July, which is more than 6 weeks prior. So it means that if we use the last day of work and we pay her 6 weeks prior, she only has 6 weeks after, and she doesn't have the advantage like other women, so that we can start to pay her from the day the baby is born, like any other woman who decides to work up to that day, and be paid for the 12 weeks maternity. Okay, some employers, like in the public service, like the teachers, they may require you, because they may take you off the pay sheet, and they may require you to get a statement from national insurance for the period of your maternity, so that they can have you back on the pay sheet to be paid through SmartStream. So different employers have different systems, but it's important for you to know that, for the woman to know that she can qualify for maternity benefits. And while there's another myth out there that you can only qualify for a certain number of maternity benefits, that is not true. If you're able to bear 12 and you have the contribution for all 12, National will pay you for all 12. You got to support them. Now, but there is legislation in respect of the Labor Department, not National Insurance. And I found out this many years ago, where this employer told the employee, this woman, that if she takes maternity leave, she terminate her services. Now, she had been pregnant 3 times already with the same employer, and she was pregnant again. Well, there was nothing she could do about that at that point. When I was called, and I said to her, but that is not true. But then I said, no, sir, but that's not national legislation. That has to be labor legislation, because the issue is not maternity benefit. The issue is maternity leave, because you cannot be terminated while you're on maternity leave. Right? That is all labor. Also, you can be terminated while you're on sickness. You can be terminated as you resume from sickness or from maternity. So that when they called the labor officer, he said yes. So she was in a bind. So I said to her, point blank, what you need to do is to get a sickness form from your doctor indicating that you are on sick leave. When the baby is born, doctor may be able to give you another sickness claim for whatever reason. And she received her sickness benefit for the period that she applied for. She subsequently came to realize that that particular employer was getting ready to close down. Now, if she had submitted that pink form to the employer, having terminated her services, she would never have gotten sent in severance. So I'm just showing you that lawyers and accountants help to run businesses. So this lecture this afternoon is important for you to know your responsibilities and also your entitlement. So that is the maternity benefit. If the woman does not qualify for maternity benefit, then she can apply for a maternity grant. Not he. She can apply for a maternity grant on the earnings of the father of the child. If it's a married couple, then there is no need for proof for the length of time you were married. On the other hand, if the couple is not married, then it means that if the man's name is on the birth certificate, they must be living together for 1 year. That is cohabitating at the same address for 1 year. If on the other hand, his name is not on the birth certificate, they must be cohabitating for 2 years. And this must be by virtue of an affidavit signed by 2 persons who can confirm that they're living together. So that, and for men in the audience, I would strongly suggest that you know that the child is yours. For the simple reason that affidavit can be used against you, and it can also be used for the lady even after you die. Because if there's a case of entitlement for that child, that affidavit may very well be obtained from the National Insurance Department through a court of law, so that you will need to ensure that that you are the father of the child. Yes, you can get it of a DNA test, but that all documents and national insurance can be obtained through a court of law, so that once the woman does not qualify for maternity benefits, then in order to qualify for maternity grant, the same period that she should have worked to qualify, he would have to have worked in order for her to qualify for the maternity grant. And she would obtain the confinement certificate, attach that to the affidavit. Now, once that is done, it means that there is a relationship built on our computer system, so that if the next year, the next week, another woman seeks to claim a maternity grant from the same gentleman, obviously she can't qualify once he's not married to either of them. If on the other hand, he is married, and a woman, because a single woman cannot receive a maternity grant from a man who is married. A single woman cannot receive a maternity grant from a man who is married. Neither can a married woman receive a maternity grant where the father of the child is not her husband. So that the relationship being built on the computer system has proven to be both embarrassing to some men, but have been to a great disadvantage to some men, because if the single woman did obtain through fraudulent means to receive that maternity grant where he's married to someone else, and then is recognized either that the wife made a claim to, then the single woman will then have to refund national insurance those monies received for the maternity grant. So that's the maternity grant, maternity benefit, and maternity grant. The next thing I'll be going on to them would be unemployment.
Hi again.
Any more questions on maternity? Go ahead.
Before you move on to the next topic, you mentioned about the number of pregnancies and was covered by NIS, and then there's also the labor law. So I was informed at some point in time, I can't remember when, that the maximum number that's covered would be 3, but that's more related to, based on what you're saying, I just want to clarify, that's more
That's the labor department.
the labor department.
And that's contractual service.
Okay.
But they deal with your contractual service.
Okay, so if I am pregnant 4 times, I am allowed to claim maternity benefits those 4 times? No.
But if you submit that form, and I would strongly suggest, if you are going to be, because the integrity of
I think I missed what you were saying before. I was asking, but
no problem. I'm glad you asked that question. The integrity of national insurance, I would like to believe that it is very high, but we know things are possible, because a woman could make a claim for the 4th child maternity benefit, but send a sickness claim to her employer. But then the employer may be able to receive through fraudulent means a copy of that maternity form that was sent to national insurance. And therefore your service, you might have still terminated service. Because I'm not representing the labor department. I'm just showing you that there's that legislation there about maternity leave. You want to through the labor department that the employer can very much use. But for maternity benefit, you can claim any amount of maternity benefits once you have the relevant earnings in the relevant 2 quarters.
okay, so just to understand, you're saying that if I had a 4th child, I would be off from work. So I need to give them an excuse as to why I'm not coming to work. And that is the sick paper.
Correct.
But the benefits have nothing to do with that.
No.
If I gave birth today and I went to work tomorrow, I can.
If you today, I wouldn't work tomorrow. I'll go ahead.
But okay, I understand.
If you had to work today, I give birth today. Yeah. I'm saying that you do qualify for the maternity leave, the leave from your employer. You will submit that maternity form. Okay. But is that window of that for pregnant maternity leave forms requested from your employer? You have to be very careful of.
Understood. Another person with a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, yes, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you
Hi,
clearly.
Tonya, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I paid attention to you mentioning the 2 quarters, right? But we have seen, and this is me, I've seen people where they had a case where, so, all right, we have covered, let's say we work January, February, and March, right? We don't work April because they let us go knowing that we're going on maternity leave in, I don't know, May, right? How will that work in terms of the maternity benefit, or do they have to apply for a grant? So they,
Okay. You're working.
Mhm.
You see, you're working January, February, March.
Yeah, so you would have been working all that time. Yeah, from the previous year. Let's say you've been working for
Okay, previous year. Okay, right. Okay.
you've been working for a year or almost a year, right? And it's coming up to that yearly contract time, right?
Okay.
And they know that you are pregnant and you're going to go off on confinement within the next month or 2, but they end your contract there. How will it work then for persons applying for maternity benefits, or would they then have to apply for a grant?
Okay. That person should have had their earnings in the 2 quarters already. So
Okay.
whether the contract, the person is still working or the contract ends, then that person will qualify for maternity benefits. So they will not need, we don't need for maternity grant. That's the first thing. Second, if it is more than 6 weeks at the end of the contract before the baby is due, then the person can claim unemployment.
Okay.
For at the end of the contract, and then claim the subject correction, because I think that person might not. I think that person should qualify for the maternity. They will, if it was sickness, during unemployment, they would not receive sickness.
Okay.
They would receive the unemployment straight. But for the maternity, I'm saying that the person would then claim unemployment, and then the maternity would start prior to the expected date of confinement.
Okay. So basically, they will be able to claim their unemployment benefits up until then, and then once their confinement officially begins, once they get that pink paper and they have that child, they can then submit the pink paper for their maternity benefit because they would have covered the relevant quarters in order to qualify.
And it would mean that at the end of the maternity, once the person is still unemployed, then they would report back to the EHAM for welcome building or do the declarations online. And then we'll get the unemployment later, shortly. But they would then get the remaining, so that if they had, say, 6 weeks of, say 3 weeks of unemployment, 12 weeks of maternity, that's 12 and 3 is 15. It would mean that the other 11 weeks of unemployment, which would give them the total of 26 weeks unemployment. They would continue the unemployment as they were, which would continue right after the combination of the earlier unemployment and the maternity benefit up until the end of the maternity, up until the total 6 months of the unemployment, if they are still unemployed.
Okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. See, most of the questions coming about maternity. Thank you. Right. Any more questions as we go into unemployment? Now, as I said earlier, there are 3 areas for unemployment. 1, if you are laid off. 2, if you resign. And 3, if you are dismissed because of the own misconduct. For resignation and persons dismissed because of the own misconduct, there will be an interview conducted, which is conducted online at present, because nationals is still not allowing for face-to-face interviews, but it's done online, and therefore the person doing the interview can disallow that individual up to 6 weeks of their unemployment if they believe that you your reason for resignation was not justified, or you were you were dismissed because of your own misconduct. All disallowances, you have a right to an appeal to a tribunal, which is not members of the National Insurance Staff, is a tribunal that you can appeal to, okay? And they can decide whether to uphold the decision of the National Insurance officers, the department, or they can overrule that decision. Now, so they said, once you, okay, for persons who resign, you must be available for work in order to qualify for unemployment. Persons resign to study, really technically they're not available for work, but the policy is that nationals will disallow you for 6 weeks and allow you the other 20 weeks because the department believes that it's important for you to have for persons to further their education or their upward mobility, and therefore you're given the opportunity of having at least 20 weeks of unemployment to be able to continue to function, so that resignation for study is automatic 6 weeks. But the person interviewing may make a decision, may come to a conclusion, sorry, that the dismissal was unjust and therefore give you your all 26 weeks, or you have good reason to resign and to give you all 26 weeks. So, but it's left up to that individual, but you have the right to appeal. But the office is not bound by anything you say, nor anything that the employer say. They will come with a combination of both, the decision on whether you'll be disallowed for any part of your unemployment. Now, you must register for unemployment and you must be available for work. Previous to COVID, you had to go to the Labor Department before you go back to do your next declaration, so that you are indicating that you are still available for work. But that aspect of national insurance, the unemployment tax, the claim has been discontinued for the time being, I believe. Now, so that you must be available for work. If you resign to look after a loved one, a mother, a child, whatever else, then it means you're not available for work. You can't get unemployment at all. You're not available for it. So you must be available for work. Because under the previous arrangement, if the Labor Department offered you a job that was available in your requisite field and you refuse it, then National can very well disallow you from receiving your unemployment benefit. So for unemployment benefit, you must register within 2 weeks of the date that you become unemployed, with or without determination certificate. I want to repeat that, with or without determination certificate. Report to the Humphrey Walcott building or register online. So you can still visit the office at the Humphrey Walcott building. Whether you receive that form or not, a number of persons have lost because they felt it was the employer's responsibility to send it in, or because the employer refused to or was unable to, they did not go and register. And once you have not registered within 2 weeks, you start to lose part of your unemployment. So for every week you do not register, you have not registered, you lose another week of your unemployment. So if you submit that claim 6 months down the road, you have lost all 6 months of your unemployment. Having registered, you are expected to do a declaration either online or in person at the Walcott building every 3 weeks, because the declaration is basically saying during the above mentioned period, the 3-week period that was passed, I did not work, I did not receive any remuneration, I was available for work, and I was in Barbados. Because if you're not in the island, you can't qualify for none of the benefits that as it were, that I mentioned about sickness, maternity. But there are those women who go overseas for babies to be born in America, and then find themselves caught down there, they can't get back here, and therefore, because you have to submit a medical a conformity certificate by a registered medical practitioner, not having obtained one, then you can't get your remaining benefits. And if you leave the island, nationals will ask you to bring your passport, proof of when you left and when you return. Okay, so that, or your ticket, show when you left or when you return. I'm not certain what immigration does now, because I think it's not family passport. But you must have some kind of proof that you did travel, so that nationals can pay you for the period that you were in the island. So for unemployment, it is 60% for a 6-month period. 60% for a 6-month period. And as I said, you can lose up to 6 weeks if you resign or if you were dismissed. But if you were laid off, you can receive 26 weeks. Now, for persons who are laid off, I always encourage them to, if another job is available, take the other job. Because if the other job is less than 13 weeks, and I was less than 13 weeks, then it means that when you finish, your claim continues at the same rate that it was previously. But remember, if you stop your unemployment, you take another job and you resign, you have to be interviewed again. And you could very well lose part of your unemployment by having resigned from that job. But I'm saying that you can take another job if you choose to, if it lasts for, but that's if you leave, if you resign, if you take it for 6 weeks or whatever else, and that's the end of it, then it continues. There's no need for interview. There's no need for interview. Only if you take the job and then you don't like it and you resign, you have to be interviewed. So the person who have taken jobs for only 6 weeks and have worked for 8 years in that job because they've proven their worth in that new job, and therefore they if you're laid off and the company reopens, you just indicate on your confinement either in person or to the unemployment office or to the online, indicate that you've resumed work, and national will pay up to the date prior to you resuming work, and therefore you will be paid accordingly. So that's the unemployment situation. And as I said, national insurance has received tremendous amount of claims. Yes, the fund in itself was seriously affected, but monies were transferred from the national insurance fund to the unemployment fund because each should be a separate fund. So the monies were transferred from the national fund to the unemployment fund so that person is working. So the fear of national insurance becoming bankrupt, a person not entitled to pensions and whatever else, I think that's what misguided. So that's the unemployment. The next one will be the funeral grant and survivors. So any questions on unemployment? Yes, we'll go smartly down. No, for funeral grant. A funeral grant is paid where either the individual, the deceased individual, would have worked for at least 1 year and paid contributions, or if the person's spouse, either wife or partner living together for more than 3 years by virtue of a proof of affidavit, once they have been once either the person or the spouse has paid at least 1 year's contribution, then the person that either paid or is responsible for paying the funeral expenses make the claim for the funeral grant, because the funeral grant must be applied for by way of a death certificate and a receipt for more than the funeral grant, or an invoice for the total cost. If there is a receipt, then there's no the reverse side of the funeral grant. There are provision for 2 witnesses, 2 sureties, really, not witnesses, 2 sureties. So that if it's a receipt, there's no need for the surety. But if is just an invoice for the total cost, then it means that you have to have 2 sureties to sign that form, because the undertaker is guaranteed at least the funeral grant. Most undertakers will require more than that, but at the same time, the funeral grant thing is $2,185 at present. If you spend $40,000, you would only get that amount from national insurance. But we know that there are some religions who vary at less than that cost. I will not name any, but at the same time, that is what is, and it's paid to the person who paid or is responsible for paying the funeral expense. It has nothing to do with relatives, because a receipt or an invoice, and the undertaker will or should only issue that invoice in one name. If it is more than one name, then they will have to make a determination. The 2 persons or persons have to make a determination of who it should go to, and so forth. Okay, so that's the funeral grant now. So that if, say, I did not work and I died, my wife worked, it means that if I die, whoever paid for my expenses can claim a funeral grant on hers. When she dies, then whoever pay for hers can claim another one on hers. But it does not relate to parents, children, siblings, no other relationship. It must be a spouse. Now, once the deceased person, either male or female, has paid at least 3 years contribution, then it means that survivors' pensions can be paid, because it means that that's the same thing as the old age pension of survivors. For survivors, there's first the spouse, as I described earlier, and children, either adopted or, okay. Now for the spouse, if the surviving spouse is under the age of 45, then it means that that individual will receive half the deceased's pension for 1 year, half the deceased's pension for 1 year. If the surviving spouse is between 45 and 49, that person can receive 1/3 of the deceased's pension up to age 67 when they will apply for their own pension. So if the surviving spouse is between 45 and 49, it's 1/3 of the survivor's pension, the deceased's pension, up to age 67 when they would apply for their own pension. If their own pension is then more, they will get their pension and the survivors will end. If the surviving spouse is 50 years or over, then they get half the deceased's pension up to age 67. And then at age 67, that individual will then claim their own pensions. Whichever is greater, they will get. It is very painful, I know, for especially women who are in receipt of a non-contributed pension, where the husband, the spouse pension was a lot larger, and they argue that, but his pension used to pay the bills and whatever else might pay for the food. Now she has to pay everything from her or whatever pension she qualifies for, but she believes that she should entitled to both. No, you're only entitled to one. Okay? And this is not for male and female, for both the male or the female. Once that person remains single, meaning they are not cohabitating or they are married, and nationals may find out whether that they were cohabitating. Okay, just like with this invalidity, national insurance receives calls from individuals, and rightfully so, because they're individuals who are in receipt of an invalidity pension, but are gainfully employed either as contractors and some accountants and lawyers and whatever else. Okay, then nationals, if they have find proof that that person is gainfully employed, that invalidity will be stopped. That person can appeal, but they have to reapply and they have to provide medical evidence. So going back then down to the survivors, the spouse will receive those percentages that what I would have indicated earlier. For children, they receive 1/6 of the deceased's pension. Each child is entitled to 1/6. So if there is a surviving spouse who is receiving half, it means that only 3 surviving children can receive survivors at any one point. If there is no surviving spouse and there are 6 children, then 6 children can receive survivors. It becomes a bit ticklish where, in the case of men, at his funeral, a number of children get to realize that person that they look just like them, to realize that he had more than others knew and understood. And this is a common practice now, so that each mother may very well make a claim for survivors. If there's a surviving spouse and she's in receipt of half, then national insurance will pay the 3 oldest of those who have claimed, whether they are children of the spouse or otherwise. And sometimes there are 3 children who are older than any of those from the spouse. And therefore, once a claim is made by the parent of that child or the child themselves, because the child can make that claim if they're 18 years old and over. But once the claim is made, then it means that national will pay the oldest of those that qualify, because sometimes they can be more than, there's no spouse and they're more than 6. Okay, so that again, they will pay the 6 oldest. It will mean that when any one of those come off the list, another one can go on, so that survivors' pensions are paid to children up to the age of 25 once they are attending a government-approved institution. It will mean that all children under 16 do not have to provide proof that they are in school, because all children should be in school up to age 16. because all children are legitimate in Barbados, then it means that any child can make applications can be made for any child. Once the child reaches age 16, they will be cut off from the pension roll. So that if the child becomes 16, say next week, and they receive a survivor's pension, the next set of pension checks will be reduced or stopped altogether until proof is provided to the National Department from that institution, whether it be BC, SJPI, BCC, a secondary school, a college or university overseas. For schools in Barbados and colleges, we do not have semesters, as it were, so that there's not necessarily proof that the child is in full time. But once it's overseas, the letter must indicate the institution, and it must also indicate that the child is in full time, either for a school year or school or semester. Okay, now it will mean that where that pension will start at the end of the school term, because at the end of the school term, all children 16 years old and over will be taken off the pension roll. In September, when school recommences and those letters are received at National Insurance, National will go back and pay from the end of the last school term, in other words, during this summer vacation, for another school year. So if another letter is not obtained, that child will not benefit for survivor's pension during the summer vacation, or as in the case where it was online or whatever else, but the school year will still commence based on the date given by the Ministry of Education. If it's the 5th of September, 9th of September, whatever, then that is the date. So the letter must be dated by the school after the commencement of the school term. Some parents the child may be reassigned prior to the commencement of the school term, and they may bring a letter indicating that the child will be reassigned, but that will not be accepted by the National Insurance. The person will still have to bring one after school commences to receive that survivor's pension.
Mr. Strickland?
Grant and the funeral, that is the funeral grant and the survivors. Go ahead.
There's someone here with a question, Stephen with a question. Stephen, you can go ahead.
Hi, good night, sir. So my question is, we're talking about a person who is grieving. So how much time would that person who's claiming for either the survivor or the funeral grant have to make the claim after the insured person is deceased?
I know Stephen would have to ask that question. Also, a man would ask that question. A very good question. Okay. The survivors must be applied for within a year. Must be. And it's your responsibility to make that claim and not the undertaker. Yes, a number of undertakers submit those claims on behalf of individuals. Some employers agree for the funeral grant to be paid to them. In other words, the application form, if there's money still owed to the funeral home, they may agree to have them used as the alternate payee. Survivors can be applied for after a year. But what is called a good cause letter should be provided to the National Insurance Department so that a determination will be made whether they will go back and pay. Because yes, persons are grieving and they don't even know or they forget to apply for a funeral grant, and many have suffered. The same thing goes to survivors. Some persons do not know that they qualify for survivors for either themselves or for children, and they make the application. But once they provide a letter to the National Insurance Board, then National Department, then the claim can be considered, but not for funeral grant. It must be received within the year of the death of the person.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Strickland. Just want to excuse me a moment. Just wanted to, I know time is of the essence and it's going up around the clock.
I know right now under the pensions. I'm going to right now into the pensions, which is what some persons are that's the last.
Great, thank you. Great. So we have about 5 more minutes, okay?
So 5 minutes, I'm going to go down the road very quickly on both government national insurance pensions and government pensions. Now,
awesome, great.
Okay, so for national insurance pensions, you can claim an early pension at age 60. Early pension is a reduction of 6% per year. So if you apply for that pension at age 60, then you're asking to receive 42%. because the pension age is 57. Now, all persons may not qualify for early pension because if that early pension is comes to less than $242 per week, then that person cannot receive an early pension. If the person receives qualify for the early pension, that's the same pension you're going to get for life. You're not going to get an additional pension. It's not going to increase at age 67. Now, for the person who qualifies for the full pension at age 67, that will be paid up until the person's death. For the non-contributory pension, persons who are receiving a pension from another source, then is not entitled to a non-contributory pension. So the persons who Barbadians who are receiving a pension from another country, because you will be interviewed for all non-contributory pension. You will be interviewed. The contributory pension, the early pension, you must provide an affidavit signed by Justice of the Peace. And non-contributory pension has an affidavit also must be signed by Justice and only a Justice of the Peace. So that for all non-contributory pensions, once you are a homemaker, a person who is mentally, physically challenged, or if you just didn't work, and then you can qualify for a non-contributory pension. So that there are a number of persons, I said earlier, who are self-employed, who are not in receipt of a non-contributory pension because they did not pay enough contributions to receive the contributory. You can't get both. No. So for contributory pensioners, there's a reciprocal agreement between Canada, Quebec, England, and CARICOM. So that if you do not have the 500 contributions, and it goes vice versa, if you don't have the amount of contributions required for any of the jurisdictions, it means then that if you have, say, 400 from Barbados and 100 from Guyana or 100 from Trinidad, Quebec, and the national will write that destination, and they will then provide with the number of contributions you've had from that source, and will mean that national will pay based on what you work contributed here, and they will pay based on what you contribute there. So it works vice versa between Canada, Quebec, CARICOM, and England, North America. So that's basically the pensions in Barbados for contributory and non-contributory. Now, for persons who are in the public sector, once you enter the public sector before the 1st of September 1975, you're entitled to two pensions. You can retire at 55, like I did. Yes, at 55, obtain your gratuity, and you will obtain your pension. Sorry, I came after 75. Any person who came in before 75 can receive both pensions, one from the Treasury and one from National Insurance. They can apply for the pension from the Treasury at 55 and the early pension for National Insurance at age 60, and continue to have both for the rest of their life. If they came in after the 1st of September 1975, but got appointed before 15th of July 1985, like I did, I got appointed in 1980. I went at 55 with my gratuity and pension from the Treasury, and therefore I will apply for my pension from National Government at age 67. Because if I apply for my pension from National at age 60, they would have reduced my pension from the Treasury. So that once you came in after the 1st of September 1975, you are only entitled to one pension. So some persons have applied for the pension from the Treasury, then turn around and apply for the one from National Insurance. National will notify the Treasury that you are in receipt of a pension, and your pension from the Treasury will be abated by whatever you're getting from National Insurance. So don't do it. Okay. Now at age 67, you will apply for your pension from the Treasury, from National Insurance. Sorry, if your pension from National Insurance is more than the one from the Treasury, then you will continue to get you will get the one from National Insurance. If the one from National is more than the one from Treasury, you will get the National Insurance pension, and the one from Treasury will cease. If on the other hand, your pension from the Treasury is more than National's pension, you'll receive the one from National Insurance, and the Treasury will pay the difference between what they were already paying you and what National Insurance is paying you. Now, gratuity is calculated at a maximum of 33 and a third years. So that any period that a person, and this will be mainly for women, but it's also for men who would have had no pay leave, not sick leave. If you have had no pay leave, so all maternity benefit is no pay leave. So if you have had no pay leave and you work only for 33 and 30 years, you had one baby that's 12 years, your gratuity will be less than 33 and 30 years. So you got to make sure that you have 32 and 30 years full employment, so that when your pension is, your gratuity is calculated on the maximum 32 and 30 years. Your pension will be half your pension. In order to get your pension at, once you work at least 10 years, you qualify for the pension from the Treasury. There are certain statutory boards, they pay their own pension, the child care board, but the person would know who they have to apply to. It would mean that when you apply for your pension from the Treasury, then you would apply for it about 6 months before, so that all the paperwork will be done, going through PAD, the Treasury, audit, Governor General Office, back to the PAD, back to the Treasury to be paid. So that the only issue of bonds, I stay clear of that. That's a political matter. But sufficient that you were telling to pay your maturity if you you will be retired at age 7 from the public service. So that, as I said, there is something called widows and children that some men would have paid prior to a particular date. If you retire and you don't have a spouse, you don't have any children, the full widows and children will be refunded to you. But that ended many years ago when the survivors' pension started at National Insurance. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that was a mouthful. I'm certain that there may be the other questions that you may have. You can go onto the National Insurance website, which is nis.gov.bb, and you will see most of what I said, not necessarily spelled out as clear as I might have spelled it out, but I do applaud you for seeking to have this presentation done. I had to hustle to get home, so I was scrambling to get home for the 6th, because I had to collect my son from at school, and therefore, family must come first. But I'm glad that my daughters were able to assist in respect of the putting everything together. So again, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, and I hope that you will, in return, share this information, because the knowledge base is swiftly disappearing from the landscape of national insurance, because those that retire are sometimes not available. I don't want to say reluctant to make themselves available, because they've worked hard and they deserve their retirement. Again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any questions at this point, any small questions, you're free to ask, but that's on your own time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Strickland. That surely was very, very informative. I too have learned, taken away so much from the smallest things and the larger things, such as, for me, someone who's been recently married, and as would have to now submit their birth certificate and marriage certificate. So something as small as that to the bigger items, I definitely have taken away, and I'm sure our members have. We will now move on to the vote of thanks, which will be presented by Rotaractor Leah Brown. Leah.
Good evening, all. It gives me immense pleasure to give the vote of thanks on this occasion. First, to our specially invited guest, Mr. Stephen Strickland. Mr. Strickland, on behalf of the Rotaract Club of Barbados, I offer gratitude to you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. Oftentimes, navigating and understanding the NIS system can be overwhelming and confusing for employees. However, our discussions with you have been enlightening. I think we will all leave just a little bit wiser than we came. Again, we thank you. Thank you to the Planning Committee for recognizing the need for clarity in these uncertain times and hosting such a beneficial session. Finally, thank you to all participants, fellow Rotaractors, prospective members, and guests for attending. And as a show of our gratitude, Mr. Strickland, I present to you a token from Things Gospel. Thanks once again, and best wishes.
Thank you very much, and blessings on your organization.
Thank you, Leah. Over to President Scott for the announcements.
Hey, good night, everyone. I'm going to be doing the announcements for tonight.
Thank you, VP Mario.
first up, this Saturday, we've been requested by the principal and staff of St. George Secondary School to help them again paint some classrooms. We did it for our Super Service Saturday, and they were so impressed that they asked us to come back again. So this Saturday at 9 p.m. we will be meeting at the St. George Secondary School, and we'll be doing 4 classrooms this time. So get your painting clothes on, bring some water, some snacks, and get ready to paint. If you're interested, you can hit up Director Alvaro or President Scott, as well as Omaworo. On Sunday, March 6th, there's a World Obesity Day hike, 5-kilometer hike. I don't know if that's a lot, but you know, if you're up for that kind of thing, get your shoes, get your gear, and you'll be assembling at Barclays Park in St. Andrew. I'm sure everyone went there at a picnic when they were like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you know where Barclays Park is, and the contribution will be $20. You can contact President Scott about that one. Another hike. Great. So this one is hosted by our sister club, the Rotaract Club of South Barbados, and this one is at Bath St. John on Sunday, same March 6th at 6:30 a.m. and the contribution will be $12 this time. And we'll be going from Bath Beach to Martins Bay, St. John. Martins Bay is a really nice beach, and that's where they have the snapper at the bar down there by the beach. So you can probably do that and then stay for lunch if you're up for that. And you can contact President Scott if you're interested in that one. And something that we all love, the Breaking Bread Takeover is coming up on the 2nd Saturday of this month, March 12th. So most of us should know the deal by now. We know we come together, we take over the entire Breaking Bread session. We make the food, we organize the setup, and we serve the food as well. So if you're interested in volunteering, just message or contact Secretary Shante or Director Alvaro and get your name down, because those slots go really quickly. Mine is already secured. And I think this one is the last one for the month. World Rotaract Week begins on March 13th and it ends on March 19th. And these are the activities. We have a virtual multi-faith session, excuse me, on Sunday, March 13th. And that starts at 10 a.m. Then we move on to a Peace Fellowship sensitization webinar. That is on March 14th at 6:30 p.m. Then there's Girls Talk on March 15th, which is a career showcase from 6 to 8. On the 16th, there's the cookbook, the Mix Up and Blend Caribbean Cuisine Rotaract Cookbook. The time is not confirmed as yet, but we are supposed to also be contributing to that cookbook, so look out for that one. On the 17th and 18th, there will be virtual cultural exchange and games night. So we'll be connecting with St. Martin, Barbados West, Central. I'm not sure. There's a virtual cultural exchange. That's what I can tell you on the 17th and 18th. So stay tuned for more information on that one. On the 19th is the Rotaract Reading Room. That's the literacy project, and that one starts at 10:30 in the morning. And then finally, we're closing it out with the Island Bus Tour, which is $65, and that includes lunch. And there will be t-shirts on sale for $30. The bus tour will begin at 1 p.m. and that one is going to be a blast. I'm hearing lots of exciting things, so make sure you book your slot. And potentially there will also be a tree planting, so just stay tuned for more information and you'll get more specifics as those dates come closer. And we're on to any other business. 1 minute, please. Right, any other business? We have been finally confirmed as a Give Back Barbados partner. So those of you who might be studying and need to get your hours in, you can actually put us on that form now and get those hours racked up. And then I think we have 2 polls to do right now. That's over to you, President Scott. Oh no, we're not there yet. These are the World Track Week t-shirts. They actually look really nice. We together again. So $30 for the shirts. Oh, this is where the polls come in. Here we go. So just answer the poll that has popped up on your screens. Right, so just to clarify, if you're just buying a shirt, it will be $35. But if you're buying a shirt along with attending the Island Drive, the shirt would be $30 in addition to the $65 for the island bus tour. All right, thanks everyone for filling out the poll. And now we're on to conference. Which is also another poll. And conference is slated to be very exciting. It's the first time we've been able to gather like this in too long. So I'm sure it's going to be really, really exciting, and the spaces are going to disappear quickly. Great, thank you very much. Now let's get ready for our group photo. So turn on your cameras, dab your makeup, whatever you need to do. And we're going to take this group photo. President Scott is going to do the honors. He doesn't have much voice right now, so just be ready, keep your smiles on. And when he's done, he will let me know, and then I will let you know to relax your face muscles. All right, 3, 2, 1. One more. All right, you're free to relax your face muscles. We're giving a hallelujah.
I'm having a good laugh.
That's good, that's good, that's good.
All right. Right. VP Mario, should I go ahead and adjourn, or is there anything else we need to?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. It is now 8:08 p.m. and I hereby adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for coming.